this should be, or is really, the end of the first summer season. It's obviously been quite a different tourist season to any previous. Are you happy that agreement is still fit for purpose, still appropriate, given how things have changed in recent months?
Well, it's a really good question, Dolan, and just to backtrack a little, the Strategic Sea Service Agreement really governs the relationship between the Steam Packet Company and the DOI on behalf of the government, and it follows on from what was known as the User Agreement previously, and linked to the acquisition of the Steam Packet, the new Strategic Sea Service Agreement was put in place, and of course, as member for ports at the time in DOI, I was involved in that, and that laid a platform for the relationship and set some expectations that the people of the Isle of Man had for the Steam Packet, and talked about things like the frequency of services, the pricing structure, the vessel offering.
But these sorts of things will have to have changed, won't they, given the circumstances this year?
Well, yes, in some of the detail, and there's been a lot of flexibility applied between both the department and the Steam Packet to reflect the needs over this hugely disrupted period. And my overall reflection is actually that this year has demonstrated the strategic value of the Steam Packet Company to the island, and really endorsed the decision to acquire the Steam Packet Company. Because I think the outcomes during this year would have been could have been very different if it had been owned by a third party. There's been some agreements around the specific conditions in the agreement.
So it's tweaks to the existing agreement rather than the existing agreement being obsolete now.
Absolutely. The agreement isn't obsolete. It's being tweaked on an ongoing basis by agreement. It's like any other arrangement between two parties. If both parties agree something, then it can be varied. Obviously, you've seen the Steam Packet come forward with their plans for a new vessel, which is great news for the long-term future of the island. If you look at the detail, then the timings on that have varied a little bit from what was envisaged in the original agreement, and there's some tidying up of the documentation to be done between both parties. But fundamentally, we're all on the same page. We're seeing the situation through a very similar lens, and very, very, very positive working relationship. So there'll be some administrative things to be done. And those will be done. They'll go through due process and get the necessary approvals. But fundamentally, that agreement stands in very good stead for the long term of the island.
A question in two parts for you. There was a commitment for refurbishment work at Heysham. Has that progressed?
Yes, yeah. Heysham has been invested in by the Steam Packet Company, and there's been some work done there. Yes, that's progressed.
And the other destination, of course, is at Liverpool, and we're looking to see construction, about halfway now, something like that. Started about January, nearing the halfway point now, with a view to it opening next summer. How's the progress been there? Okay,
so the progress on there, as you would expect, has been impacted by a number of factors. The COVID situation clearly has disrupted construction in the UK. And the productivity on site is reduced by some of the practical measures that have been brought in around social distancing, etc. In addition, there's some disruption to supply chains, which we're all seeing. Things just take longer to be obtained, whether it's building materials or medical equipment or whatever. Those things clearly weren't part of the original plans, weren't envisaged. And of course, we've gone through the harder stages of the work in terms of the site and initial groundworks. So we're making good progress. We're expecting the building to be out of the ground in the next few weeks. It's looking as though the timescales may be slightly delayed against what was originally envisaged.
So maybe not a summer opening after all.
We need to firm up and communicate what the timing is going to be. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a reasonable expectation that, given the factors I've outlined, that it's going to be a little later than we'd originally intended. But good progress is being made. We've got a very professional team around us, very well regarded major contractor in terms of CISC, and there's a lot of work going in at the moment. We need to firm up and communicate what that means in terms of the availability of the terminal in due course.
You've spoken a bit about the plans for a new vessel for the Isle of Man Steam Packet Company. The agreement also states that Manannan's due to undergo some refurbishment, costing about £250,000 by next March. Given some of the disruption you're speaking about, are we likely to see that deadline moved as well?
I mean, that really is a matter for the Steam Packet Company. I mean, it's their ship, and clearly it's not being used to the same extent this year as had originally been envisaged, with less frequent sailings.
It is an operational matter, but it is also in the agreement, so it's
it is, and there's a conversation, as we've already touched on, around the some of the detail of the agreement. I suspect that we may need to adjust that slightly, and it'll be done in a collaborative manner between government and the Steam Packet Company. So there's nothing definitive at this point in time, but there is some ongoing conversation.
The agreement says the Steam Packet can extend the deal by a year if the TT is cancelled. It obviously was this year. Mm-hmm. There's a big question mark over next year. Have they indicated they will do that, first of all?
Well, I think it's likely that they will. I mean, it's all part of the broader conversation in terms of the 2020 TT. Of course, it was cancelled, so it's entirely appropriate for them to extend it if they wish. And I think if I was in their shoes, I would be extending it.
What's the deadline by which they have to tell you their intentions on that front? Is there one?
To be honest, I'd have to check the documentation with officers on that.
Just finally, the political member with responsibility for ports, your old job, of course, in the department, recently said the sea terminal looked a bit tired. Are there plans to give it a makeover? Do you share his view?
Yeah, I think it's important that we continue to refresh our offering, and again, there is provision in the sea service agreement for the Steam Packet to carry out some work refreshing the sea terminal building.
So that really is the island's shop window, isn't it?
It is, yeah, and I take on board what Mr. Callister said. He's quite right. Looking at it from a visitor's eyes, I actually really like the sea terminal building, but it does need a bit of refreshing and continuous upgrading. We're doing some great work on the prom at the moment, and we've got to keep upgrading our offering to make sure that our product for visitors is something that meets their requirements. So yeah, very much of the same mind as Mr. Callister on that.